It is Pride Month, so we here at To The Point want to celebrate the LGBT plus community by having an amazing segment built around them. Our guest today has starred on many shows and in movies that you've all watched, and we're going to talk about this community and the amazing things that it does. Because we may not be able to have a Pride parade, but damn it, we're going to talk about the amazing LGBT plus community. Find out more coming up next. And this is To The Point. We have a great show for you today. I know, stop me, you always hear me say it's a great show, but truly it is. We have Scott Lowell joining us today, and you probably know Scott from his role as Ted Schmidt on the hit Showtime series Queer as Folk. Yes, Queer as Folk ended over 15 years ago, but this show clearly is a hit. People still talking about it globally, not just here in the United States. What we're going to talk to Scott about is his role doing that, his amazing series that's out now called Adoptable with amazing cast in that, including Noah Wiley. Great cast, right? And we're also going to talk about Pride Month and the LGBT plus community and talk about the lack of having a Pride parade, but Pride's still very much going on. And it's not just in 1 month, it's every day for most of us in our hearts. So we're going to talk about diversity and loving one another and having a great community. So let's get to the point and welcome to our show, Scott Lowell. And we're excited to welcome our guest, Scott Lowell, to the show. Scott, how are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great, Eric. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I'm excited to have you on. You've done so much. I mean, you have quite the amazing background as a creator, which we love having creators on our show. And, you're here on Fan Friday, so we always have amazing creators. Last week we had, Ming Chin from the comic book men on AMC. I'm a comic book guy. Josh Jeppy was there, and he was showing us his little baby Yoda. Sorry, I just completely froze. Somebody's going to edit this and be like, did he just say that he showed us his little and didn't finish that sentence?
Little Elvis.
Well, just a little, but it was cool. It was Baby Yoda, and if you don't like Baby Yoda, there's just something wrong with you. And all of my eyes, that's just the way I look at people. Like, how do you not like Baby Yoda? He's the man. But Baby Yoda. But we enjoyed that. So you've done a few things, and I want to talk about the power of streaming TV because you have an original TV show, Adoptable. That is on Star Baby Network, which is near and dear to our heart here because our producer and sometimes co-host, Miss Jordan Gelber, runs that beautiful network. And you've worked on Queer as Folk, which is awesome. But Adoptable is really interesting, and I don't want to jump ahead, but we're going to jump ahead to start on that because I want to talk about it. Why it was so important to tell your story. You have an amazing cast on this show. If you think about it, you have Noah Wiley, Emily Swallow, who, if you don't know, since this was filmed earlier, but Emily has gone on to be on many things. But to me, what she's famous for is being on Mandalorian. Like the way I tied in Baby Yoda and Mandalorian, just
it's all working around.
All circled in. And also you had Sharon Gless, and you have other amazing cast, but that's just to name the top three. And Noah, he's also a very famous actor. So tell us why was it so important to get this story out on Adoptable?
Well, it started off as a spoken word piece that I did, at a moth story hour type event. And I was kind of forced into doing it. It was not a story I necessarily, the personal side of it, of searching for my birth parents. I shared it amongst my friends, but I didn't necessarily want to go public with it. But when I was forced to do this event, it ended up going so well, and it ended up touching people's lives. It's a very funny story to me. There's so many awkward moments in it, but it also touches people in a way that it made me realize it's hard to find someone whose life hasn't been touched in one way or another by adoption. Either they themselves were adopted, they know someone who's adopted, it's become such a prevalent thing. And that's such a very long journey from where it started back when I was born in the 60s, where it was such a shameful thing. And it was a hidden thing for a woman to get pregnant out of wedlock, and they were sent away to nunneries and having the baby in silence. And then they would come back into decent society again. It would be okay. And now it's a much more open topic. But the story of adoptees, especially adult adoptees in this country, and what we have to go to try to find our roots, because most of us are not allowed access to our original birth certificates even, and to know where we came from or who we are. And that's the other part that I found was kind of a universal theme for everybody. We're all, whether you're adopted or not, we're all trying to figure out who we are in this world. And that's something in the story that tapped into almost everybody's heart, I felt like. So I felt like I wanted to get it out in a wider range to people, and doing a web series at the time. And when I first started thinking about it, this was really back in 2012, so it was quite a few years ago. And web series were still mostly things people watch on their cell phone or on their computer screen. And now you can see them on your big TV, wherever you'd like to watch them. They don't have to be these little 2-minute things, that take place in one little box. So you can watch it easily on your phone. Now you can expand it and make them just independent television. And that's how I looked at it when I wrote it. That's how I looked at it when we shot it, as like a little indie TV show that I could have full control over without worrying about notes from a network or a studio or anything like that, and tell the story the way I wanted to tell it.
I love that. That's amazing, because there's so many people that are out there. I mean, I know in my life alone, my mother-in-law was adopted, and so she's the first person, and she's talked about the struggle of not knowing anything. And in fact, it was funny, because the whole time, excuse me, that I've been married to the family, I don't know why all of a sudden I'm coughing over this. Hey, I'm emotional.
I know.
But she's always told the story of where she was from. And in fact, my wife, when she's like going down her family tree, it was always like misinformation. And then they took one of those swab tests that everybody's doing. There was 23andMe. And boy, did that change the whole dynamic of their life. So it's funny how they get to the real story by doing those tests. That's why I love this, this production and talking about it, because so many people, there's a lot of folks that are out there and they don't talk about being adopted. Like, you almost have to pull it out in like a bad moment they share it, which is weird that they're like at their weakest moment, they're like, but I've gone through this and this is why. And you're like, it's funny. You're like, dude, if you would explain that.
It's very vulnerable. Yeah, and it's a very vulnerable thing too, right? Because it gets to the core of, again, who you are and where you come from. You worry about insulting your parents if you want to go and search. It's tied up in so much fraught emotions. So it's a very complicated thing for people. And it's something I tell people because, especially since having done the show, and when we launched our fundraising campaign online to fund the first season, is another place where people from all over the world were writing me, oh my God, I'm adopted. I've never really searched. What's your advice? And the thing I tell people is, if you are going to search, you really need to come from it from a non-needy place, because chances are it's not going to be great. Either you're not going to find them, or you might find them and there might be challenges there. You might be disappointed in what you learn about where you came from. So if you go into it needing these people to replace something or fill some void in your life, you're setting yourself up for a fall. But if you go into it just out of the curiosity of, again, trying to just know where you came from and what's your family history, then you're going to be okay. But you have to be willing to know this may not work out, and you need to be okay with that.
I love that. That's very true. Whoa, I have an extra camera here going. There we go. How about one camera, not 4? That's what we were running with just a second ago. I was like, hey, power of live TV. Hey, but let's talk about this. It is June, and I know we've been slammed with COVID-19. 2020 just has a wicked sense of humor, and it's like, oh, you thought COVID-19? Ha-ha! I'll show you. I'll raise you. Black Lives Matter, which is an amazing cause. I totally love it. I love seeing America unified through that. And everybody speaking out. And it also happens, which is great, because, hey, if you're going to throw a protest and get people together, what a better month to do it in Pride Month, because we're already waiting for a parade and to have fun. And we can't get together and do our Pride parades. Have been closed throughout the country. I mean, the ones I've been to, San Francisco's, I've been to that one multiple times, living in the Bay Area. It's one of my favorites. It's fun. I want to take my children to it. They were younger before, and there's things that I'm like, it doesn't come with a parental advisory sticker, nor do I want anybody to, because it's the fun of the Pride Parade. I mean, I remember years ago when Facebook was like one of the first groups to go out and they wore their pride shirts out there. And that was like amazing. And people like, oh, you know, they put their fingers up and we're like, it's horrible. Like, and now it's like everybody's like, these two movements go together so well and they stand up for each other. You just saw in Brooklyn 2 Sundays ago, they stood up there and were chanting Black Trans Lives Matter, which was really cool. All those people, yes, Governor Cuomo, I apologize that there was a lot of people out there, but when we're fired up and passionate about things in this country, y'all know we get together and we have a huge party and we stand up for it. You know, just because one person says one thing and his hate mongers say another, we're going to stand up for ourselves. So let's talk about the importance in media. With your background with Queer as Folk, let's talk about the importance of diversity and representation in media, because it's been this sugar-coated thing. I mean, I remember when Ellen had that controversial episode, remember back in the day where it was like, oh my God. And now you look at Ellen as like, it's funny how America is, right? There's most of us who we love diversity and we're all about it and we don't care. We're like, dude, I don't care who you're married to. I don't care. Good for you. Yay, you're in love. I mean, that's whatever. And then there's these other people that want to tell you you're bad. I mean, we got a vice president that all believes that if I sneeze on you, you could catch gay. I mean, that's just, I mean, I think he thinks that. I mean, I definitely.
They'll make special masks just for the Pride Parade for that. They'll finally wear a mask then.
But he'll show up and say, I'm sure there'll be a post soon about how they are the best president, the best White House ever for gay people. I mean, I know that they've taken the claim. They've done more than Abraham Lincoln did for black people. So Abe's like, oh God. That's why Abe has his hand on his head at the memorial. He's just looking over at the White House going, I don't know what the hell they're saying anymore. Anyways, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the importance of diversity in representation in the media. What's your thoughts on that? How important has even Queer as Folk has been a big key to that, with people being very open?
Yes. Well, I'll go back to some points you were already making, and then I'll dive into that as well. But, you know, what's interesting is that, you know, the gay civil rights movement started ostensibly in Stonewall in 1969, right? And 51 years ago now, there were also riots in my old neighborhood in Los Angeles of Silver Lake at the Black Cat Bar and Grill. There was riots there even beforehand. But again, these were all police riots. These were all people rebelling against police treatment and malfeasance on the part of the police, where they had just had it and they fought back. So there's actually a great similarity between the start of the gay civil rights movement and what's going on now with Black Lives Matter too. So the fact that this is all happening in 1 month, I think, is actually a really good thing to remind ourselves of that. And that gay civil rights movement, if you look how long it took the black civil rights movement to get to the 60s, to where they finally had the civil rights bill passed, that's hundreds of years they had to march to get there. The advancements of the LGBTQ plus community has been so much swifter, and that's in large part because they stood on the shoulders of the black civil rights movement. And it's been really wonderful to see this year, I think, that in a lot of ways the LGBTQ community has kind of stepped back a bit and said, you know what, we're here to support you guys this month. There has not been as much exuberance about Pride. It's really been, the focus has been on Black Lives Matter, because there is that recognition that, like, we would not be where we are today had you guys not started this fight years and years ago and given us the courage and, like I said, the shoulders to stand on. So I wanted to touch on that too, because there is a convergence of both those things.
I love that you bring that up real fast before we jump into it. I love that you brought up Stonewall, which is huge, which is funny. We spent Christmas and the holidays in New York City when we used to travel, this thing called traveling and flying on aircraft. People remember it. And we did this, and we took our children, because we always stay in Soho. So we went over, there's a great restaurant, Little Bird, shout out Little Bird, which is where the Friends, if you've ever watched Friends, we're going to go on a landmark thing here, but right really close to there is the Stonewall, which everything happened, and my children had no idea about it. So we took them there in history so they understand, right? So, you know, you live here in Portland, Oregon. We have ties to the Bay Area, so they're very familiar with it. My daughter's just huge into the movement, and it was great to take them there, because my daughter's been able to come home and understand where everything starts. There's always a start to a movement. It's just like, she's never understood. I mean, and she's 16. So think about it. Hatred is not something, I mean, I could proudly say this as a father. We don't teach hatred in our household. That's, we don't teach it, and I'm proud to say my kids are naive to when they see it. They cry when they see racism because they don't understand it. So when they're watching things on Netflix, this amazing, thank you Netflix for the Black Lives Matter documentaries that you keep pumping out, just talking about the history that we didn't get to see in a history book, seeing the Robert F. Kennedy story about how passionate he was. You're talking about LA again, talking about, you know, the 13th, which is on there, which is just way powerful. If you're going to watch that, you're going to bring tissue. I don't care who you are. You're going to cry. But to see it, so it's amazing to take them back to Stonewall and have my daughter go, this is where it started. And then she asked me kiddingly the other day, she's like, Dad, it seems to be the police happen to be involved in everything that causes a lot of, it's usually cops beating up on somebody they don't like. And I'm like, not all cops, because we have friends. We love our law enforcement, our good law enforcement officers. But I'm like, yeah, you probably have a good track history. I would say that's safe. Yes, Stonewall had law enforcement involved. And of course, Black Lives Matter. They're like, dude, go look at our history. Look at the cops wailing on us for years. It's not hard to see. The Watts fires of the 60s, and again in 92, 93, same thing. Cops out of control. Right. So. And
again, you know, police, like you mentioned, you know, you have friends who are police officers. Police are only instruments of a system, right? It's not, you know, the police are doing a job they are told to do. Some of them do it with a little more vigor than perhaps you want them to in certain circumstances. But it's really speaking of what the larger system is in our country and what's been there from the beginning in terms of, you know, our original sin of slavery and how that's embedded in the country. And then as far as just, you know, the homophobia and to kind of go down the path towards representation in the media and how media can help in these things. All phobias, you know, come out of ignorance, right? You're afraid of something. People are afraid of change. They're afraid of what they don't know. And when it came to the large amount of homophobia in the country, it all came down to, and the reason things have been able to move so quickly, I believe, is a large part because of the media in terms of helping the LGBTQ plus community. And yes, you had Ellen come out on her show, and it was a huge thing, and the show tanked because people weren't ready. You had Will and Grace come on, and you know, it was kind of gentle. And we like to say those two shows kind of eased the closet door open a little. It kind of like they just kind of made it a little bit of jar. And then when Queer as Folk came around in 2000, because we were on Showtime, which had the tagline of no limits at the time, Queer as Folk was able to kick the closet door off the hinges in a lot of ways, because even with Ellen and with Will and Grace, most portrayals, if not all portrayals of gay characters in the media up until then were, as the creators of our show, Ron Cowan and Dan Littman, always have said this, and it's very true, gay characters were always seen as either clowns or eunuchs. They were either the funny kind of best friend, just there with a campy line, or if they were portrayed in a straight manner at all, you could never imagine them actually having sex or kissing or anything like that. Yeah. And what we did on Queer as Folk was have a show where all the main characters were all gay, living their lives, again, not in Miami Beach, not in West Hollywood, not in San Francisco, but in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. These are the lives of gay people living in an industrial city. And what are their challenges for them? At its heart, it's a soap opera. It mostly has to do with relationships. But the politics we got into, we were, you know, talking about gay marriage before anybody was talking about it, dealing with the crystal meth addiction, dealing with within the gay community itself, the phobias about HIV status, and showing these people as fully flawed human beings who had sex, very graphic sex on the show. And it was groundbreaking in that way, as well as just portraying human beings as like who we are psychologically. How we are in bed has as much to do with our psychology as it does to how we communicate, right? It's a side of characters. Usually you see people kiss and then they cut to the sheets are up under the chin, and that's it. You don't get to see like what's the strength of that bond? Why does that person have such a hold on this other person? A lot of that has to do with what their sexual chemistry is and what they do. So that's something Queer as Folk was able to do, and to kind of start that conversation of people getting to see like, oh, wow, gay people are like me. They have the same issues I have. They have bad sex like I had bad sex. They have good sex like I have sex. And they fall in love. They have their heart broken. People die. They get married if they can. They want all these same things we do. And I know for a fact, look, we started that show 20 years ago. We're still doing fan conventions around the world because it's not just the US that this show has had an impact. It's places like Russia and China where they still have to get the show bootlegged over there because it's kind of illegal to talk about gay rights over there. But these fans are so ardent and passionate about it because, as we kind of like to say, people came for the queer, they stayed for the folk. They're just people. And that's what they get invested in. And I know we helped boost the fundraising and membership of organizations like PFLAG, people who are now out there passionately fighting for LGBTQ rights, even though they're straight themselves. At least half our audience, if not more, are straight women. That's who keeps the show going. So we helped along that way. And then since then, you have shows like Modern Family and other shows like that. I think these enormously popular shows have helped remove some of the ignorance. And that's, I think, where the gay civil rights movement has been able to advance as quickly as it has. I mean, to go from 1969 to, was it 2012 when gay marriage passed? That's not a long span of time when you compare it to the black civil rights movement. And I think the media had a lot to do with that.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I think if you look at it, and you're right, when you think about Ellen, and then you look at Will and Grace, which, by the way, I love Will and Grace. You know, yes. Sean Hayes' character was hilarious, and he was kind of the first one to talk about the things that he talked about openly. But it was still pretty vanilla. I mean, obviously, it was a network show. But Queer as Folk, y'all came out on Showtime, which is like, yes. Showtime. It's like, it's anything that's premium, you know what you're going to get between Showtime and HBO. You're going to push the boundaries. And I think both Showtime and HBO release shows pretty close to each other that really pushed the barrier. And I think really helped change people's minds on it. And then you had, at the same time, you had Brokeback Mountain came out, which was a fabulous movie. But a lot of people were like, you're right. If you think about it, what do people remember of Brokeback Mountain? They remember about the sex scene with, Jake and the late... oh my God, Heath Ledger, sorry. It was like the late Joker. Sorry, Heath. That's not what you're remembered for. I mean, great performance as the Joker, but is a fabulous actor. I mean, I thought that movie was very well done, crossed a lot of barriers that I think people need. I think we become comfortable in the uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people who don't that, and being a white, straight male, I watch these shows for the art of it and the fact of being in the media, just like you, right? Just watching this going, this is great. We're crossing lines. We're crossing this imaginary BS line that we're raised. We're like, oh my God, if I'm around somebody who's not the same sex as me, no, you're not going to turn into anything. You're fine. You're a human. It's good to see other people love each other. It's good to see, I love those shows like my wife says and like you touched on. They have the same fights we do. It doesn't matter. Nope. Your marriage is all. You argue about the same damn things. It doesn't matter. That's right. Yeah.
And for what it does within all these communities as well too, for them to finally see themselves represented on television in a way where they've never seen that before. And again, 20 years ago the show started. We've been off the air for 15 years because of streaming, because of the DVDs, things like that. We continue to get new generations of kids watching the show, Yep. Hopefully they don't start watching until they're 18 or so. But I've had so many, I was a baby gay. I didn't know another gay person in Nebraska where I lived. Your show gave me a sense of belonging and community and self-love that I didn't have otherwise. And that's what these shows do as well, too, whether it's shows dealing with the stories of Black people, Asian, Hispanic, trans, all these things. This is where media matters, and this is where media can really make a difference in people's lives. I just watched, you're talking about all those great Netflix documentaries, which are awesome. And I just watched on Amazon the documentary, I Am Not Your Negro, about James Baldwin. Mm-hmm. And the effect it had on me of hearing his perspective of things and their use of film clips from his childhood through growing up, the movies he watched, which were all white. And you really get, I don't know, it really hit me, this feeling of like, that's what it's like to grow up in a white supremacist society. Like if all you see are white people, you're asking yourselves, where do I fit in this world? And the propaganda that plays in your mind is very complex. So to be able to see things where you finally see each other, and it's something we struggled with when Queer as Folk first came out, because it was the first show to really honestly depict three-dimensional gay characters, we got a lot of pushback from trans people, from people of color, from all these people who where am I? Why don't you have it? All these different kind of things, because, there's LGBTQ plus, because there's so many different aspects of being gay in this country. And because they were so hungry to see themselves represented, they all wanted to see themselves represented in this one show. And we just weren't able to do that. It was enough to get a show that was that gay on TV. And I think the producers and the creators and the network weren't able to encompass everyone. Back in 2000, when, again, 2,000 people wouldn't even audition for this show. Actors would not even audition to be on this show, because it was still such a stigma to play a gay character back then. And to get a show like that on television was a huge accomplishment. So there's only so much you can do. It's kind of similar to, when people say, well, all lives matter instead of Black Lives Matter. It's like, yeah, that's true. But right now we're just focusing on this group because they're the ones who are being shot dead in the street. So let's just focus on this for now. And I think that's what happened with Queer as Folk. But it's one of the regrets I think all of us who are involved with it certainly have, is that it's not more diverse in a lot of ways, even though we were so groundbreaking.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, Scott, for joining us. This has been awesome. I'd love to have you back on. You're always welcome here. I love talking about this. I want to talk more about digital creation. You have created a lot of stuff, and I know we just ran out of time. It's just how this is.
I know. I'm sorry. It's Pride Month.
It's Pride Month. There's a lot to talk about. I had to talk about this. Trust me, we could go a whole nother 30 minutes on this All Lives Matter stuff, because I still don't understand why people are so confused about that. All lives matter. Thank you for the broad statement that air matters too. Yes, we know, but we need to take care of one another. We've done that. It's like my kids come to me and we talk about this, and it blows my mind. My daughter's like, Dad, our friends in the community, the LGBT. Now you added plus, okay? I finally got it down. Now you added plus to it. So now I feel like a bad guy. I've been saying the normal acronym without the plus. So
that's okay. It's okay.
I don't want to get hate mail, people. No hating me. I'm doing my best here. But she came to me and she's like, you had, the Black community has always gone through this, hundreds of years. We had Montel on our show. We talked about this. Hundreds of years of racism. Then women in our world, still today, if it wasn't for what the Black community is going through, look how much we've ignored women in our country with, being treated equal. Even the CEOs of companies aren't getting paid the same as their male counterparts. And in fact, one of the big things is the NBA going back to work, and they're getting spoiled by, Disney. But is the WNBA getting that same treatment? They're not. And then you have the gay community that have just done amazing things. The LGBT, plus community, they've done amazing things to the work. So there's so much that you look that racism and hate, it needs to go away. And I think we've reached a point by having an evil person in charge has caused all of us to go, nope, we actually love each other and we want to survive, and hate has no place in our country. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter what sex you are. It doesn't matter who you sleep with at night. Hey, and we have the Supreme Court absolutely agree with us last week, so that's been outstanding on 2 measures the Supreme Court has come through for us. So I love it when the Supreme Court,
it's good.
And when it's his homies voting against him, it makes me feel good too. It's like, what are you gonna do now? Can't even complain. But anyways, I want to thank you for coming on. We gotta get you. Sorry, I had to go on that rant just because it made me feel good.
Absolutely.
Hey, you brought up All Lives Matter, and that just automatically makes my blood boil. Like, really?
I know. Well, I don't know if you've seen that video that's up. I think is so clever. It's very quick. It says one girl, blonde girl, and she's playing both characters in this scenario. And one, she's standing behind a screen where there's a house on fire, and in the other, she's there in front of just a regular house. Yeah. And the girl in front of the regular house says, like, well, what do you mean? Like, doesn't my life matter? Doesn't my house matter too? And she's like, yeah, but my house is on fire. So yeah, but what about my house? Yeah, can we take care of this house that's on fire right now, though? And and that's kind of what it boils down to.
Well, we got to keep educating and talking about it. That's what we're talking about. Pride, still making sure that we talk about. We have a lot of things that make this country awesome. You're a large part of it for what you've been doing with Queer as Folk and your mission during quarantine, and amazing show, right? Cult following still to this day. 15 years after you guys went off air. And of course, then there is Adoptable for folks to go out. We'll make sure that link is available on the show. Again, Scott, thank you so much for joining us. And
pleasure,
see you
Eric.
real soon.
I keep fighting the fight.
Awesome.
Let's get to the point.